here's Brody Brazil.
In this video, I'll go into great detail to explain the vocal signal chain that I utilize here at the home studio, including the hardware, the software, and the settings to try and achieve that perfect sound. I mean, yes, how things look here on YouTube or live streaming, they're important, but I truly feel how they sound are even more imperative. Now, the hardware is pretty simple. This microphone, which you're seeing, it's the Neumann U87Ai. My audio interface right here is the Univeral Apollo Twin X. And even more than that, this room, this entire room, is acoustically treated. I built 8 panels, wood frames, rock wool insulation. I've done everything possible in this room to try and soften the reflections of my voice hitting the walls and then eventually getting back into this microphone. I guess what I'm telling you right off the top here is the disclaimer. You can do all these settings, you can copy all of this, but if you don't have the proper room, the proper environment, you're not going to be able to achieve the sound that you want. The other thing that I should explain here before I get into these settings, by the way, the other thing that needs some explanation is that what I'm aiming for here in this sound is something specifically for YouTube videos and for live streaming, kind of that broadcasty type sound. What do I mean by that? Something that is compressed, something that still sounds natural, something that has a full spectrum of sound, right? I need a little bit of crispiness, I need a little bit of boom on the bottom end, but I also, again, need it to be natural. I don't want to overhype either side of the frequency spectrum. It needs to be intelligible on a small speaker iPhone. It also needs to sound really good, for example, if you're watching this video on a television and listening to it through your home stereo system. So a lot of different needs, but that is what I'm aiming for as I now tell you about the settings that I use with this microphone. Okay, so again, the signal chain has changed over the years. Pretty much once a year I dive in and refine the settings, but top to bottom here, I'm gained up at 28.5 dB on the Unison preamp, which in this case is the SSL 4000E channel strip plugin. That's my Unison plugin and preamp right here. So 28.5 dB is where it's gained up. I am using expansion. You can see the settings here. The range is just below 5. Really quick attack and release. The threshold right there is probably at a -10. And when I stop talking, you can see it's taking about 6 dB away. I like this expansion. Normally, I'm not a big gating or expansion fan unless you have a near perfect room. You don't get a lot of that gate chatter when you start and stop talking. So this one sounds pretty good. So the expansion is on there. In terms of low or high cut, I'm not doing any of that here with this particular plugin, although you can do that. Then we get into the EQ section. I am boosting at 4,000. That's actually my top end here, 4,000. And each one of these dots represents about 3 dB. So let's call it almost 3 dB at 4,000. Then in the high mids, I am actually taking away, this is kind of my de-essing here, at about 6,500 hertz, taking away maybe 1 dB, something like that, on a very tight cue, very precise surgical cut right there to try and get a little bit less of the S's in this mic and my voice. Oh, by the way, how did I not tell you from before? The microphone has a couple switches. I am on the cardioid pickup pattern. The low cut filter is not engaged and neither is the pad. So all of that you need to know before this gets into the UAD Apollo X. Okay, now we'll move on here to the low mids, and I am cutting that boxy region, about 275 hertz on a relatively tight cue. I'm cutting that almost here, almost 6 dB. It's in the 5 dB range, I would say. If I brought this back up, in fact, I'll do it now, you can kind of hear how it all of a sudden sounds a lot more nasally. So I'll bring this back down to about 5 dB. All right, then in the low end at 100 hertz, I'm boosting about 3 dB on a bell curve. I'm trying to give it some of that boost, some of that oomph right here. I do have the slider up a couple dB and the output up just a little bit. I'm really trying to use this plugin to give me a little bit of saturation there. I'm really trying to get the sound out of it. Okay, so from there, I'm actually not using the 1176. I had that in a previous version of my signal chain, but I've taken it out. Instead, I go right into the Neve 1073, which is a combination here of a preamp, which I'm not using, I have that off, but also an EQ section. Now I'll go left to right here. On the high frequency, which I think is about 12,000 hertz, I am giving it a little bit more sizzle. I think each one of these dots represents 2 dB, if I'm correct. So 2 dB boost right here. Then we get into the mids, and I'm actually cutting in the 700 hertz range. So I had the previous cut at about, what did we say, 275. This secondary cut, which is minor, it's less than 2 dB in the 700 hertz range. And then down low at 60 hertz, so kind of that sub-bass frequency, I'm actually adding about 2 dB. Now, I know what you're saying. I'm also cutting here. This is my low cut at 80 hertz. I'm trying to clean up all the dirty, but I want to add a little bit of that to the bottom end, but I do, again, want everything below 80 to kind of tail off. I don't want it to get too muddy below 80 hertz. So those are my settings for the Neve 1073. So just to recap, I've done expansion, I've done 2 sets of EQing, and now we get into the final thing here, which is the compression. I'm using the LA2A gray plugin. There's a couple different versions and variants of the LA2A here. Limit mode, the emphasis knob is turned to about 2 o'clock. My gain is about 30. My peak reduction is about 45. And you can see that in standard talk, my gain reduction here is anywhere between 0 and 3 dB. Now, obviously that changes if I get farther back from the mic and out of focus, or if I get right up on the mic, it's clearly going to be a lot higher. But the bottom line is it's keeping me at a nice consistent volume, and optimally, I'm only reducing between 0 and 3 dB during normal speech, and then during excited speech, yeah, maybe it's going to get up to about 10 dB. One other thing I should have explained here is the fact that I record and process all my audio in real time. Whether I'm live streaming or just recording a video as live, I'm not going to go back and do all of the audio or video post-processing that a lot of different people do. And that's okay. It's just that the quantity and the volume of things I'm creating, I don't have time to go back. So I do everything live. I kind of bake in these settings, which might be dangerous for some. If you're just learning all of this, it may be easier to record everything straight and flat without effects, and then go back afterwards and optimize your settings. But once you get comfortable, you can create these settings so that when you're live streaming or just recording a video, you don't have to go back after the fact. You can just trust your settings and know the sound you're already going to get. So by now, you've been listening to me this entire time with my signal process. This is how it normally sounds. But what if I turn off all the effects at once? This is the microphone at 31 dB, no other effects, no EQ, no processing, no low or high cutting. This is essentially how the mic sounds clean, dry, and raw. And you can instantly hear that it doesn't have that authoritative punch. It's a very mid-heavy mic. No, make no mistake about it. I love the U87Ai. This is a microphone that is kind of like a lifetime investment. I plan on using this for as long as I can. I'm very satisfied with it. However, a lot of people are going to buy this mic, plug it in without any effects. They're going to hear it like this and say, well, it's not that impressive. Why does everybody like this? The reason that this microphone is so impressive is because it's so flat like this, but you can't use it like that. Kind of like a baseball glove. When you get it, it's firm and stiff and doesn't shape your hand very well. I imagine some shoes are like that too, but you got to break it in. And in this case, you've got to apply processing, equalization, compression so that you can achieve a sound that makes you happy at the end of the day, something like this. So these are my settings for the Neumann U87Ai and the Universal Audio Apollo Twin X. Hopefully some of what I shared made sense. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video if it actually brought you some value. I'll have more of these for different microphones, but yes, this is my daily driver, the U87Ai on this Rode shock mount, the PSA-1 on the boom arm. I use this every day. I will continue to. This is my main vocal chain for the home studio.